Before we begin, I want to share a resource that can make your divorce process far easier and much less stressful. It's Hello Divorce. Hello Divorce gives you a guided, step-by-step path through your divorce with clear instructions, simple online tools, and support from real legal and coaching professionals when you need it. You get help with paperwork, access to affordable legal advice, and a process that is designed to save you money, reduce conflict, and keep you informed every step of the way. They've created a special page just for Divorce and Beyond listeners. Visit hellodivorce.com/Susan to explore their plans, pricing, and resources so you can see exactly what fits your situation. If you want a clearer, calmer, more empowered way to move through your divorce, start at hellodivorce.com/Susan.
Coming up on today's episode of the Divorce and Beyond podcast.
If you get married in the honeymoon phase, you are very likely to be smacked in the face a year or two later, and you're actually in a relationship with an imperfect person, and you are an imperfect person, and you're both being imperfect people in an imperfect relationship. And that's when you have to see do you have the skills? Do you have the tools? Are you both willing to see someone who can give you the skills and the tools? Are you willing to do things differently? Otherwise, things sink and fail.
Welcome to Divorce and Beyond, a podcast about navigating divorce and what comes next. I'm Susan Guthrie. I'm a divorce attorney and mediator, and for more than 3 decades, I've helped people navigate divorce with clarity, strategy, and compassion. Each episode offers practical insight into the legal, emotional, and life decisions that shape your future. So let's get started. Welcome back, listeners, to Divorce and Beyond. Today's episode was inspired by a single sentence in a social media post that stopped me cold. And that was, "Not every relationship is meant to be saved." Those words came from Dr. Jenn Mann, one of the most recognized psychotherapists in the country. She's the longtime host of Couples Therapy with Dr. Jenn and the author of The Relationship Fix. In that post, Dr. Jenn reflected on her own marriage and divorce, sharing that leaving her marriage was one of the hardest things she had ever done. But she also shared something powerful, and that is leaving ultimately gave her confidence, fortitude, and a deep understanding of just how courageous and resilient she truly is. For many people, especially during what we often call divorce season, one question quietly lingers. Is this just a rough season, or is this a relationship that has run its course? Today, Dr. Jenn and I talk honestly about how to tell the difference. We explore when therapy creates repair and when it creates clarity, the emotional cost of staying too long, and why ending a marriage can sometimes be an act of strength rather than failure. If you have ever asked yourself, should I stay or should I go? This conversation is for you. So let's get into it. Dr. Jenn, I am so delighted that you're here today to talk with me and to talk with my audience about this topic. I told you earlier, I have followed you on social media and, of course, throughout your career. But when I saw a certain post that you put out, it was back in about September of last year, and it was about your own divorce journey a little bit. You know, it was very simple, the post. It said, on September 9th, 25 years ago, I got married. Leaving that marriage was one of the hardest things I have ever done. That got my attention. I immediately clicked, below, because where the real meat of this and what grabbed my attention was in your caption. And if I may read this. Every season of VH1 Couples Therapy with Dr. Jenn, I would tell the couples, Not every relationship is meant to be saved. I have to tell you, that sentence jumped out at me. I immediately reached out to you through a DM and asked if you would come on to talk about it. And I'm so delighted that you're here. Thank you very much. I know my listeners are going to get so much from this conversation.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, and I'm glad that the post resonated with you, and it's something that you feel like all of your listeners are going to connect with. It was a tough post to write, and it was something that I had been contemplating for years, but it was something that, a lot of people are like, oh, you shouldn't talk about your divorce, and it's kind of counter to your brand and blah, blah, blah. But I've never been someone who's been about my brand. I've been about being authentic, and I guess you could say that is my brand, but this is who I am. This is what I went through. And I think that people can learn from my experiences. And I felt like there are other people out there who are going through this that need to hear this and know it's going to be okay. And you got to listen to your heart, and you got to do what's right for you. And ultimately, what's right for you is in the best interest of your family and those that love you and who are near to and dear to you.
It's so very true. And I can see where people might advise you, not on brand. But I have to say, I read your book, The Relationship Fix, which is a wonderful book. Listeners, as always, I will have a link in the show notes. And one of the things that struck me about the book, that sort of flows from this post, is that, you are very careful to when you're giving advice, right? You're talking with people, you're telling them how, in a sensitive time, how they might move forward. You're very sensitive to saying, this is what you can do. Here are the insights and the helpful steps, but the decisions that will be made are yours.
When I wrote The Relationship Fix, I wrote it because so many people reach out to me after seeing me on VH1 Couples Therapy with Dr. Jenn and VH1 Family Therapy with Dr. Jenn, and would say to me, like, I wish I could do therapy with you. And I can't do therapy with everyone, and I wish I could. But what I wanted the book to be is basically like a year of couples therapy condensed, so that people could do this at home and be like, okay, is this relationship something that can be saved? Here are the tools. Like, I can't do the work for you, even if you're in my office, but I can give you the tools. And this book provides the tools that if a relationship is in trouble, that people can use. And also, it's a book that can help people figure out, maybe this relationship is in so much trouble and is so far gone, or there are such core issues that can't be changed that it is better that I walk away.
Right. And there's that concept that got my attention in the social media post. And, I think for me, it resonated because I remember, divorce attorney for 35 years. And so I was only ever seeing people at that point where they had made the decision that the relationship was not meant to be saved. And I think it was not until I got married in my first marriage and then divorced that this concept that not every relationship is meant to be saved, and that doesn't mean that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right? To take it that one step further.
Yeah.
And, to me, that was a huge light bulb moment where I could still honor the relationship that I had with my first husband, but that relationship was no longer running. It had run its course.
And look, I'm a big believer that there is no relationship that is a waste of our time. The only ones that are a waste are the ones we don't learn from. And I think that that's a really important concept, that whatever happened in our relationship, in some way, look, relationships are a dance. And with the exception when there is domestic violence, which is a whole other category, which is just a absolute, there is nothing that anyone can do that makes it okay to be hit or to be harmed in that way. But your average divorce, where there is conflict, where there is disconnection, that everybody participates in that dance. Everybody participates in the degradation of that relationship. And it's really important to be able to look at your part of it so that you don't recreate it in your next relationship. Wherever you go, there you are. And you bring that to your next relationship. So it's especially important to be able to look at your part in things.
I think that's such a key factor for people, and probably where what I think is sort of the misunderstanding around we hear the phrase divorce is a failure so often. I mean, I certainly in my career, I've heard that more times than I care to count. And I love what you just said about the only relationship that's a failure one is one that we fail to learn from. I mean, that's a soundbite moment that my listeners will be hearing over and over again because it's so very true. And it's one of the reasons I think why second marriages, third marriages actually have higher rates of divorce than first marriages because unfortunately, a lot of people don't learn from the mistakes of a first relationship. And I wonder if that too goes to, though, some of that shame.
Well, I
that
think
people
it's also,
feel.
it's very easy to point the finger, especially if the other person if there was an event, if it was an affair, if there was a other type of betrayal, if there was something specific that happened, a trauma that the family went through that the two parents, the two partners could not get back on the same page or just saw so differently, or one person decided to join a different religion or a different philosophy or a different political, like there are events that happen and it's very easy to point to the event or the person and to be like, well, he changed his mind about X, Y, and Z, or she decided to take on this whole other persona. But it's also really important we look at how did we contribute to the dance? How did we contribute to the system? Because couples are a system. We operate in a system. And like when you go to school to become a therapist, a big part of what we study is family systems, of the system of the couple. And everybody has a participation. And it's very important to get clear on what yours is before you go into your next relationship.
And if you aren't clear on that, you do tend to just continue doing the same thing
over and over again. And it probably comes from your childhood.
Oh, there's whole episodes on that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know. We'll take a quick break here, and when we come back, my conversation with Dr. Jenn goes even deeper. In the second half of the episode, we talk about how to tell the difference between a rough season and a relationship that truly cannot heal, the deal breakers people often ignore for years, and why therapy can sometimes be less about fixing the marriage and more about gaining the clarity to trust yourself. We also get into one of the hardest questions of all, staying for the kids. When it helps, when it harms, and how children are actually affected by what happens behind closed doors. You won't want to miss this part of the conversation. We'll be right back. Listeners, as a bit of a product junkie myself, I am so excited to announce that we have partnered with Blue Mercury, which is your one-stop destination for luxury skincare, makeup, hair care, fragrance, and more, all thoughtfully curated and backed by their expert service. And because you are listening today, Blue Mercury is offering 15% off your first order when you use the special link in our show notes. It's their way of saying thanks for being a part of the Divorce and Beyond family. So just click the link in the show notes, shop your favorites, and enjoy the 15% discount that will be automatically applied to that first purchase. That's 15% off your first order at bluemercury.com. Check your show notes to claim it now. Well, and one thing that I'm wondering, and I know you sort of help people, you were talking about the book, The Relationship Fix, and it's sort of being that couples therapy, 1 year of therapy in one book. We're sitting here in what is known as Divorce Month, right? It's January every year. I can tell you for 35 years, this is the month where people at least are, starting to think about it. And so we know there are people who are listening right now who are like, is this just a rough season?
Sure.
Did we just have a bad holiday?
Yeah.
Or is this something that it really can't be fixed?
They're divorce curious, as we say.
Yes.
And I think that, look, there are a lot of things to look at in examining that. And there's certain things that are kind of no-goes, that there are certain, like, I tend to be a believer that most couples can work through most things. I've seen couples work through terrible affairs and betrayals and all kinds of horrible stuff, substance abuse, all of that sort of stuff. But there are certain things that couples cannot or should not work through. Like, one is emotional unavailability. If you are in a relationship with someone who's just emotionally unavailable, you've talked to this person about it, they don't show up for you, they don't connect with you, they don't spend time with you, like there's just nothing there, that's not a relationship. And that's not something that can be worked through. Addiction or compulsive behavior, where the person is unwilling to get help. Now, if they're in a 12-step program, I'm all for it. If they are in therapy, I'm all for it. If they're actually willing to address the problem and work on it, absolutely. Mental illness, where someone is not willing to get help. They're not willing to see a therapist, a psychiatrist, a doctor. They're not willing to do any kind of reparative work. There's nothing you can do. And that's not something that you should have to live with if the other person is making a choice like that. In general, any kind of unwillingness to get help. If someone is physically ill and they're unwilling to see a doctor, if they are unwilling to go for treatment, anything like that. Abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, anything like that. Those are deal breakers. Habitual cheating. One time, you can work through it. You can figure out what went wrong in the system. How are we not tending to the relationship? But if someone is a compulsive cheater, then you're signing on for more of the same. Lack of character. You can teach someone relationship skills, but you cannot teach them character. So don't even waste your time trying. And then the other is compulsive lying. If you have someone, a partner who is a compulsive liar, you're never going to get the truth, and you're never going to know if you're getting the truth or not, probably until it's too late. And that's just not something anyone should have to live with.
And so all of those, it's very interesting. They all strike me as things, well, some of them, I guess, where someone changes sort of midstream, but a lot of those are things that probably were there throughout the relationship, and it's something that has either just grown or something that maybe you've grown and you're looking for further growth in your partner.
Or sometimes people get married really quickly. They get married while they're still in what's called the honeymoon phase. The first typically year, give or take 6 months, 18 months tends to be the sweet spot. We are in the honeymoon phase of a relationship. All we see is how we are like. You like pizza. Oh my God, I like pizza too. How did two people who love pizza like we do find each other? Like, all you see is where you are the same. And what happens is, after you get out of that honeymoon phase, you hit the negotiation phase, which is a very important phase to know if you have a viable relationship or not. It's where you see, how do you work through conflict as a couple? How do you deal with things when you have different beliefs? How do you handle all kinds of difficult things that come up? How do you handle a crisis? How do you handle terrible things that happen in our lives? And so if you get married in the honeymoon phase, you are very likely to be smacked in the face a year or two later when shit gets real and you're actually in a relationship with an imperfect person, and you are an imperfect person, and you're both being imperfect people in an imperfect relationship. And that's when you have to see, if, do you have the skills? Do you have the tools? Are you both willing to see someone who can give you the skills and the tools? Are you willing to do things differently? Otherwise, things sink and fail.
Well, and so you make that good point, right? And that's why people, why your shows have been so incredibly successful, why you wrote the book. It's that being willing to get some help, right? Get some help with some communication, with how you handle chronic stress and situations. So I would imagine one of the deal breakers is what you said earlier, is someone who's not willing to get that help.
Yeah, if someone is unwilling to get help, they're unwilling to look at their part in the problem, then you're hitting a wall. Because most couples who get to the point where they're considering divorce, they've tried on their own. And,
Right.
in AA, they say doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results is the definition of insanity. Well, why would it be different? If the two of it's like the blind leading the blind. And, look, even if you're a therapist, therapists see other therapists, because when it comes to your own life, it's like a pointillism painting. You're too close. All you see are the dots, and you have to step back in order to see the full picture. And so it's really important that couples get help. And therapy is the ideal in my book, but sometimes people will choose to see a pastor or a rabbi or a religious person in their community who is helpful, or someone who is a mentor. But to me, seeing a therapist, and by the way, I'm talking a licensed therapist, not a life coach, someone who actually has done the 3,000 hours under supervision and passed the licensing exams and is actually a professional with a license, is very important.
I could not agree more with that. It's reminding me, and I will tell a little story, and I'm not breaking any rules. My first husband laughs about this with me as well. But the time I knew that our marriage was not going to make it is we were in couples therapy. And I was talking to the therapist, expressing something. She looked at him and said, so and so, do you think that this is something that you might be willing to work on or something? And he looked at her and said, why are you talking about me? I'm here to help you fix her. And she started laughing and I started laughing.
Yeah.
And I started going to my own individual therapy after that.
Yeah.
So that's what you're saying when
people,
someone's not willing.
I get a lot of people in my practice that come in like, hey, fix her, hey, fix him. And my response is always, you're both part of the problem. So I'm going to work on fixing the relationship and the system. And if you're not up for that, then I can give you another name.
I might not be the therapist for you.
I'm way too blunt for you. You're not going to do well here.
In other words, the shit's getting real right now too, right? In therapy. Exactly. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm thinking about this, and someone said to me when, people will come to a divorce attorney a lot of times for advice when their marriage is in trouble. And I'm like, not my role, not my wheelhouse. Yeah. Always said what you just said. Please, here's a list of fabulous therapists. Go talk with one.
Yeah.
But many times people would say, they want to go to therapy. I just don't even know I don't know if I have the energy. I don't know if it's even worth it. I've asked so many times and now they're finally willing to do it. And someone wiser than I am said to me once, I always say to go, because even if that doesn't work out, even if that therapy ends up not leading back to a relationship together, you will then know that you tried everything that you could into having a healthy relationship.
I completely agree. And I always say the same thing, that if you're going to leave your marriage, you want to know you've done absolutely everything humanly possible to try to save it, especially if you have kids. Because one day you will have to look those kids in the eye and they will be old enough to really ask questions and say, so what really happened? Did you do everything you could? And you want to know, and you want to feel true to yourself and true to your word that you did everything you possibly could. No matter how hard, no matter how exhausting, no matter how frustrating. And look, you never know. Sometimes people go into couples therapy in that moment where they're like, I don't want to fucking do this. Like, I'm out. I've got a foot out the door. I picked my attorney. Like, I'm visualizing my life. And they get into therapy and they're able to save it anyway.
I've seen it.
That's a beautiful thing. That's an amazing thing.
It is.
So I would say give it your all.
Well, and you mentioned children, when children are involved. And I know that was actually in the rest of the caption to your post that started this conversation. It said, well, it is important to do everything you can to save a marriage, especially when kids are involved. Sometimes it's in the higher good of the whole family for the relationship to end. And I think there's a tension there for people. We always hear, I'm staying for the kids, or I'm going to stay until the kids graduate from high school. And I feel there's such a difficult line there for a parent, right? Do you stay?
Any parent who loves their children, which hopefully is all parents, most parents would do pretty much anything for their kids. And I know a lot of people, look, I've had a lot of adults come into therapy and say, my parents should have gotten divorced, when I was 5, but they stayed together and I grew up in a horrible atmosphere and it was terrible. Like, I think that we have romanticized the concept of staying together for the sake of the children, and that we think that that is somehow whitewashing the problems of the family, and that kids are not aware. Kids are incredibly sensitive to the atmosphere. They're incredibly sensitive. The kids oftentimes know before we know. And they pick up on everything.
Every nuance.
And you don't even have to say anything in front of them. And they are perceptive and they're aware. And you also have to think about what kind of relationship are you modeling to them. And it's kind of like you have to pick your poison sometimes in these situations of, do I want to stay in something that's not working and model something that is not healthy to my child? Or do I want to leave and break up this nuclear family and have my child go through that pain? And it's an incredibly difficult decision to make, but it must be made in a way that doesn't romanticize the stay together for the sake of the children. And I've seen a lot of people who use that as their excuse because they're too scared to leave.
Yeah.
And that's understandable. And I think that we don't talk enough about how hard it is to leave and how scary that is emotionally, financially. It becomes, the future is unknown. Everything you envisioned for yourself, growing old with this person, being a grandparent with this person, this vision you had of this idealized life with your children is all gone. And that's terrifying for most people.
Oh, it is. I mean, I always
Yeah.
call it the big black hole of the future suddenly. It's one of the reasons why I named the podcast Divorce and Beyond, because I realize while you're going through the process, you're so focused on the divorce as if that was the only thing that will ever happen in your life, but your beyond is there. There's so much to learn from it. And one thing I want to mention about what you said, I think it's really significant, is you're modeling your relationship for your children when you stay together in a bad relationship or a relationship that's not working. You can also model for your children how to respectfully and collaboratively end a relationship or transition a relationship if you work with your spouse on your divorce and making your divorce something that isn't the war that we so often see on television or in movies or on Bravo, wherever it might be. So
exactly.
Yeah, right. So you have opportunities for your children in not only staying together, but also in leaving. I always told every client that I had, even if you chose not to go to therapy at any other time in your life, please go while you're getting your divorce, because it will not only help you, it will help your children.
And I also recommend for a lot of couples co-parenting therapy, because you probably were struggling to co-parent while under the same roof. And the one thing that you both have in common, no matter what, is that you love your kids. It becomes exponentially harder to do it from 2 households even with good communication, but most couples don't have that, especially in the beginning when people are hurt, people are angry, people are betrayed, they feel abandoned. There's like a whole storm of feelings that are like all around a family that is going through this, and they still have to co-parent.
There's that golden and, and
Yep.
you still have to co-parent. No, co-parenting therapy is invaluable. It's a rare couple who easily co-parents through the storm of a divorce. And divorce is, it's as much as, having the right professionals and the right attitude and all the hard work, nothing will ever take away the fact that it is a difficult process to navigate.
Incredibly difficult and incredibly painful, and a massive change, in that stressor scale of like life stressors. I think it's like top 10, maybe
it's number 2.
Makes sense. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Death of a child, divorce.
Makes sense.
It's right above incarceration.
Yeah. I believe it. I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So one of the things that I know that you said about therapy in the book was that one of the gifts of therapy, couples therapy, can be that it's not about, in the end, fixing. And this kind of goes to my story about my ex-husband and I.
Yeah.
It doesn't turn out to be about fixing.
Yeah.
It becomes about clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a gift in clarity because for so many people, they sit in the place of, should I stay or should I go? I think the average is 4 years or something with that they've been thinking when they're divorce curious, as you said.
Yeah.
So I wonder about that gift of clarity for people when that happens in therapy or outside therapy. What generally do you see? Because I know there are people listening right now who feel they have no clarity on this topic.
Well, I think the first thing is to trust yourself, to trust the process. And it's very hard to trust a process you've never been through before, and that scares the shit out of you. So that makes it extra hard. But you have to trust that you'll know when it's time to go. You can ask for clarity. You can pray for clarity. You can search for clarity, but you ultimately have to trust that you will know. And if you're someone who doesn't know themselves very well or is super disconnected, well, get your ass into therapy ASAP so that you can connect with yourself enough to know when this is real. I remember when I was in a relationship in grad school, and I dated this guy for a number of years, and the relationship was kind of starting to go sour. And I am not a religious person, but I started praying, and I was like, God, please give me clarity. Please let me know when it's time. Like, I
send me a sign.
Exactly. And I'll never forget that we had gone on a trip together with my family. We came back and we were living in an apartment where we had like parallel parking. And my car was, I think, behind him. Or no, my car was behind him, and his car wouldn't start. He couldn't get out of the spot, and he was freaking out. And I had this moment where it was like God came down and spoke to me and was like, this is your sign, girl. Get the fuck out. And he was like throwing this irrational fit and freaking out. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to sign on for a life of this. I'm out. This is it. I'm done. That would happen to be a dramatic experience. It's not always that dramatic. Sometimes it's much more quiet. It is a peaceful understanding that develops in yourself and kind of comes to fruition at a moment. And you're like, yeah, I think it's time to go. But you got to trust that you will know. It won't make it easy. It won't make it not painful. It won't make it fun, but you'll know.
No. And it's become sort of the dividing line between, I call it the two limbos. The limbo of, should I stay or should I go?
Yeah.
That then transitions to my future is now a black abyss of I don't know what.
Yeah.
And that takes, you mentioned it earlier, but it takes an enormous amount of strength.
Yeah.
And you said actually in the caption, courage to leave a relationship. And I think that doesn't get honored enough.
I agree with you. I think that people are very quick to say, oh, you were weak or you were not courageous because you left, that somehow it's a negative. But I think that the strength and the courage it takes to leave a relationship that isn't working is enormous. To be able to tolerate the judgment of others, to be able to tolerate how it changes your life, your family's life, your children's lives, if you have kids, it's pretty massive. And you also have to know that if someone chooses to leave, it's pretty bad for someone to leave. And those who have not been through it can stand on the outsides and say like, oh, they can wag their fingers and have their judgment. But the truth is, anyone who's been through it knows.
Nobody who has been through it is judgy.
Yep.
If the judgy people are usually the people who haven't been through it. But I have heard, the people saying divorce is the easy way out. And, having been through it myself. Yeah. And
yeah.
thousands of people over my career, I can very much promise you.
Yeah.
But I want to leave on the positive note, because you were very clear in your post, and it ends with this. Let me say, leaving my marriage ended up giving me confidence and fortitude because it made me realize how courageous and resilient I really am. I'm so happy you shared that insight. That's the kernel, the golden nugget, I call them on the podcast, that I think will so resonate even for those who are in that dark place right now of, should I stay or should I go? Can this marriage be saved? All those things.
Yeah.
If it ends up moving forward and divorce is the future, it was in some ways a gift to you, I think, is what you're saying.
It absolutely was. It was a gift to me on a lot of levels. And it was a gift to me in terms of, as strong as I thought I was, this was just like a whole new fucking level. Like, I walked away and just kind of had a belief and a feeling like, if I can handle that, I can handle anything. And, since then I've dealt with my share of life's issues. I lost my mother. My dad is not well. And I take with me that strength and that knowledge that I can survive even the things that seem unsurmountable, that seem like life just doesn't go on, but it does. And there is happiness again, and there is joy again, and there is love again, and there is life, and there is light, and there is all sorts of good stuff. And there's also, oftentimes when you leave a marriage, what you underestimate is the value of freedom. Freedom to live your life in a way that is conducive to your well-being, and that where you have the freedoms to, whether it is picking up the remote control and picking what you're going to watch on TV, or the music you're going to listen to, or the house you're going to live in, or the clothes you're going to wear, but you get to make choices that are just for you. And I think that there's a lot of value and beauty in that.
What an amazing note to end on, with hope. I was going to ask a further question of, what would you like to leave people with? But I can't imagine anything more hopeful than that. Freedom is in your beyond, is part of that beyond. And, there's this journey that you've walked through right here in this episode is so valuable for people to understand that some relationships are worth saving. Some relationships are not worth saving, but it's part of the journey. Yeah. And I think another part of the journey is clearly get some therapy.
100%. And look, when I had my show on Sirius XM, the Dr. Jenn show, I used to tell everyone, you should have 1 year of weekly therapy, and all couples should have 6 months of weekly therapy, just so that you have that base. And you also have someone who knows your history from before whatever happened that brings you back into therapy happened. And so they've got your baseline, and they can be there for you, and they can really help you and support you.
400 plus episodes. I've never heard anyone say that. And that is such a great nugget. I love that someone can have your baseline. You don't need to get into a therapist's office because something's wrong. Get in there so that your safety line or for your support system's in place
your baseline
when you need it.
And also, sometimes people don't realize, they're like, oh, my baseline's fine. They don't realize their baseline could be a lot better. And like, therapy can help you see where you're lacking insights into your own life, what tools you're not using, it just can better your life, even if your life is doing pretty good already. And I think it's a really important tool for everybody to have.
And if you want to dip your toe in, everyone, you can get the relationship fix and you can step into the six-step method that Dr. Jenn has set out for couples therapy there as well. Well, I so appreciate your coming on and talking about this topic with my listeners, Dr. Jenn. Thank you so much. What last word would you like to leave with people? How can they get in touch with you? I know the book, I'll have links to in the show notes and all for people.
People can find me on social media, especially Instagram. I'm super active on Instagram at Dr. Jenn Mann, 2 N's on Jenn, 2 N's on Mann.
Well, and that's where I found you. I highly recommend following her. Thank you again so very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, before we wrap up, as always, I want to leave you with a few golden nuggets from this amazing conversation. First, not every marriage is meant to be saved. That truth is not anti-marriage. It is pro-health, pro-honesty, and pro-self-respect. Second, doing everything you can does not mean losing yourself in the process. Effort matters, but effort without reciprocity is depletion, not strength. Third, therapy is not always about fixing the marriage. Sometimes the greatest gift it offers is clarity and the ability to trust yourself again. Fourth, staying for the kids is much more complex than it sounds. Children absorb emotional climates, not explanations. And sometimes the higher good of the family is ending the marriage thoughtfully and respectfully. And finally, leaving does not mean you failed. As Dr. Jenn shared so powerfully, leaving can reveal just how courageous and resilient you truly are. I want to thank Dr. Jenn for such an honest and deeply meaningful conversation. For everyone listening, you can follow Dr. Jenn on Instagram at Dr. Jenn Mann, and you can find her book, The Relationship Fix. It'll be linked in the show notes. I've also written a companion article to this episode titled, Staying for the Kids? What Children Actually Absorb from Unhappy Marriages, along with a downloadable resource to support you. You'll find both of those also in the show notes and on the latest episode page at divorceandbeyondpod.com. Listeners, thank you for listening to Divorce and Beyond. I'm Susan Guthrie, and I'll see you next week. If today's episode helped you see something more clearly, take a moment to reflect on one insight you can carry forward, one decision you can approach differently, one next step that feels more grounded. Divorce is not a failure. It is about facing reality and choosing a healthier path forward for yourself and your family. You can find show notes, trusted divorce resources, and expert guidance at divorceandbeyondpod.com. If this episode was helpful, follow the podcast and share it with someone who may need support right now. I'm Susan Guthrie. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next time with more clarity, insight, and support on Divorce and Beyond.